Hello and welcome to In the Making, a series of conversations from North Bennett Street School where we connect with a range of new voices, fields, and perspectives. Before we get into our conversation, we want to thank the many supporters that make our programs possible, including the Massachusetts Cultural Council. Thanks for joining us, everyone. My name is Kristen Odell. I'm an NBSS staff member and host of In the Making. Today, joining us right here is Tom Furrier, owner of Cambridge Typewriter Company for 45 years. Just weeks ago, he closed up his shop to retire. Congratulations on your well-deserved retirement, Tom.
Thank you very much.
Over the past year, and especially in the last month, you've been inundated with press, and I can't think of what a surprise that must have been, that as you're winding down, people seem to be scrambling to express their appreciation for your work, and we are also doing the same. That must be quite a trip.
It is. We've always had a fair amount of media attention.
Yeah.
And they've all told me in the past few months that they want to be there for the end because, of course, everyone wants to know how it ends up, how it turns out.
Do you know how it turns out, or are we still processing
We're still
this?
processing it. Absolutely.
Well, thank you for giving your time to us today. We're happy to have you.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. And a fun fact to just tip us off, Tom used to repair typewriters in our old facility at, what was the address? 39, yes. So Tom was the on-site repair person for our typewriters.
Yep.
Yeah, as well as the whole city of Boston.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's start off with a question that ties into our upcoming exhibition about meaningful work. We are, in the next couple of weeks, we're opening up our 2025 spring exhibition centered around the theme of meaningful work. I want to ask you, what does meaningful work mean to you in the context of this career you chose and committed to for so many years?
Well, I think I alluded a little bit earlier to you about that. It was important to me when I was looking for my forever type job.
Your calling?
Yep.
Yeah.
That it was something that I felt that I was doing something important, that something that made a difference, and something that made me feel good about doing it. And I was so lucky that for me it was fixing typewriters, but it was something that happened on the very first day that I started fixing typewriters. Which I recognized at the time was, what I wanted to do for a career. And it has been 45 years, which I can't believe, but you talk about meaningful work. I couldn't imagine anything better than that.
Mm-hmm.
The whole time through, I could never imagine doing anything else but what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always surprising me in new and different ways, new experiences. And I've said when I was, doing blog posts, I've said a few times, who knew that fixing typewriters would open so many doors to so many great and interesting experiences?
Can you give us an example of one experience you're thinking about now?
Oh gosh, just, meeting just incredible people.
The relationships.
The friendships. I've got favorite people, but it is mostly the younger people who are my favorite, but David McCullough was one of my favorites. And I used to, geek out every time I was with him, and it'd be like 5 minutes before I started treating him like a normal human.
Right.
And that was for, I was doing work for him for like 10 or 12 years before he passed away.
You also mentioned at one point that it seems to me that you've had a calling to meaningful work from being a child. You said that before you even came into this typewriter world or this niche trade, you studied forestry. I mean, that seems also like meaningful work.
Yeah. And, my dream job growing up was I wanted to be a park ranger for one of the national parks. Which is not easy.
Yeah.
It turns out I tried really hard for a number of years, and they're almost like even entry level positions or like plum, almost political appointments. You've got to know someone, not just know someone that knows someone, but you've got to know someone that has some pull.
Right.
So after a few years of trying, I decided that I'd have to look elsewhere.
Mhm. From what I understand of your history, you entered this profession as a young person inspired by your neighbor's work, who previously owned Cambridge Typewriter Company. What was it about typewriters or typewriter repair that initially captivated you? If you can get into the weeds of the
Yeah.
mechanics.
It was definitely the act of fixing something that's broken, because that's something that I've had a lifelong thing with. I called myself like a lifelong tinkerer. Even when I was like a little kid, I was marching around the house with my dad, and I had my little tool belt with my tools and helping my dad fix things around the house. And that was the beginning of it. He was a carpenter, so he's always doing something, and I was like his sous assistant.
And you did some framing at a certain point in your life,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. My first job out of when I graduated college was I worked for a contractor framing houses for a summer,
Mhm.
which was a lot of fun.
But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. So go back to that moment where you know that your neighbor is doing this work and you were already passionate and interested in tinkering.
So I didn't really have a thing for typewriters. The only experience I ever had was when I graduated high school, my parents gave me an electric typewriter to bring to college, which I hated. I hated using it, and as soon as I was done with it, I gave it to the first person I saw, and never thought about it that 3 years later it would be my passion. But when my friend approached me about, learning how to fix typewriters, I just sparked something, a curiosity that just made me say yes. But it was that first day of getting into the nuts and bolts of it, of taking a typewriter and just stripping it down and putting it back together again, which took the entire day. And at the end of the day, I tell people this voice in my head said, "This is it." Literally, this is it. And I knew right then and there that this was going to be my vocation.
Wow.
And the fact that it was really bodes well for listening to that voice in your head.
Yeah. 45 years in, can you look back over your career and think, is there something else that, if something else had been presented to you at that time, do you think it would have clicked in the same way?
It's possible if it was something similar, like I think I mentioned earlier. I thought I'd be closing my shop at some point in the mid-90s. The business was so bad.
Mhm.
All the shops in town were closing, going out of business, and we were like next in line. And I was trying to think, I was racking my brain, what can I do? All I want to do is fix typewriters, and if that's not possible, a friend suggested I look into taking classes, learning how to repair watches. And as soon as he said it, if something clicked, I said, "Oh, that might be." So I found there was a local watchmaker in Stoneham, a shop owner who gave classes. I took classes for 5 years to learn how to fix watches. Um, and I think I would have been happy doing that. The passion wasn't quite the same,
Mhm.
but the fascination was there. And then a funny thing happened. People got interested in typewriters again.
Yeah, so I don't want to jump around the history, but I do want to pause there and talk about why that happened. So you'd been working in this trade for some time, and then you were doing on-site work around the city of Boston and in-shop repairs.
Yep.
And then the computer happened to offices all over the world.
Yep.
And so how did you just told me you transitioned or tried to transition into watch repair, but how long was that period of time where you thought this isn't going to stick? And then the resurgence of vintage typewriters happened. Like, what was that experience like?
Well, the whole, period where I really thought I wasn't going to make it, it's basically the 1990s. There was like a recession early, and then there was a recession, the dot-com crash in 99, which was like the really big recession at that time, hurt businesses even more. And I was within weeks of closing at that point. But just getting through that period, oh my God, was doing whatever I could, I'd go months without getting paid.
Mhm.
I had to make sure I was there. I was afraid to even miss a single phone call.
Who was sustaining your business throughout those lean years?
There was, some people who used typewriters at home. Some companies still had typewriters, even though they had computers, they still had typewriters too, which I would maintain. But, most companies got rid of their typewriters.
Mhm.
There were, some corporate accounts, a lot of city town halls, kept me going. But that was just to pay the rent.
Yeah.
And the bills, and anything extra, than I would get paid. But it was a big struggle.
What is it about typewriters and the culture around them that drew? What aspects of this led you to turn it into a lifelong career? I mean, you dabbled in watch repair at a certain point out of necessity, but also out of interest. But you came back to this.
Mhm.
What is it about this culture around the typewriter that has kept you so engaged?
It was, I love the fact that people kind of love their typewriters.
That's like their
Yeah,
family member.
They're, if you're a writer, it's a tool, but it's also a very personal item. Just like jewelry is a personal item. With typewriters, you're sitting there, you've got your fingers on the keys, and you're transferring the thoughts from your brain through your fingers into this machine. So, how can it not be a
An
personal
extension.
item when you're putting all your energy into this device?
Mhm.
And to fix it for someone who depends on this, brings it to you, and you fix it for them, and they are so over the moon happy. The payback for me is immediate
Mm.
when they come and pick it up. And that never gets old.
Tell me so you mentioned also that that's an experience that people have when they walked into your shop.
When people come in, it's such an old school shop. It's like walking back into an old repair shop from the 40s or 50s. And I kept it that way on purpose,
Mhm.
and I could have modernized it and, made it nice and spiffy, but,
It was perfect.
it was perfect.
Yeah.
And everyone who came in loved it, and people would come in to drop something off, but when they came back, they'd bring people with them.
Mhm.
Because they went back and said, "Oh, you got to see this place," when they bring their mate back or their friends or their family, and that told me something right there.
Mhm.
Um,
I want to pause on this moment that I'm feeling right now around if you've ever thought of a space like that you think, oh, I got to go there. Oh, I really, that looks like this is right now, like, you need to make time to go and do it because that's what Cambridge Typewriter was for so many people is, oh, I really want to go there.
Yep.
Now they don't have the opportunity to now.
I know.
And
That's
so a reminder to go visit those spaces while we have them.
very bittersweet time
Mhm.
for me and my customers. Some of them are having a harder time than I am.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question about the
Sure.
bittersweet
Yeah,
moment?
sure.
You said that one of the most valuable parts of this work for you is the relationship that people have, the extension of themselves as they're into their typewriter, and that you have the ability to repair that.
Mhm.
What do you think is going to fill that feeling for you moving forward?
It's not known. It's the unknown. I don't know yet. I mean, I do have, other passions and interests.
And you have those relationships, which are
And I'm lots
lasting.
of relationships, people that I will get together with and, be in touch with, the rest of my life.
Mhm.
No doubt about that.
Yeah.
And there will still, I'm telling people there'll still be typewriters in my future. Whether I repair machines at home or for people or friends or sell machines on eBay or, have typewriter events around,
Mhm.
the state. Remains to be seen.
So the bittersweetness for your clients, what have you been telling them now that you're closed? Where are you telling them to go get their machines repaired?
Well, the next closest typewriter shop is Merrimack, New Hampshire.
Mhm.
And to the north and to the south would be Pawtucket, Rhode Island. Other than that, you've got to get down to New York City.
Yeah.
But people are really missing the space.
Mhm.
It's a safe space. It's almost like a sanctuary type of space. that people could come to that's not there anymore. And that's what they're upset about.
Yeah. Is there a particular repair that stands out in your memory as especially meaningful?
I have a number of them.
I mean, you don't have to give up details, but maybe share what was meaningful about them.
No, it just, because most typewriters that come in, lots of them have stories, or people have stories about that revolve around the typewriter. And some of them, are about the typewriter because they belong to a famous writer or something like that. And those are some of the more fun ones. Just because of the history attached to it and the great works of art that were typed on them. Fixing David McCullough's machine for the first time that was it for me.
Yeah.
I was giddy for weeks. And I was so because that was he just had the one machine that he typed all his books on. And the fact that I had to walk around the shop with it and I might trip and drop it was so unnerving to me that people laughed at me. I would cradle it like a newborn baby as I was walking around the shop with it.
That's another question about your careers. When you have those very meaningful typewriters you're repairing, do you have to think of yourself as a conservator, or are you hyper precious about it, or do you recognize that it's still a device that's used? And
I don't look at it like a conservator type of thing. Just that I am, fixing something that this person uses and loves and is so attached to. And then I'm fixing it for them so they can continue to work or write or whatever it is they do with it. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. Now that you've just retired after 45 years, I know you don't want to hear that anymore, but it's going to be a couple more times.
It's sinking in.
What would you say from a niche small business owner perspective, what would you say has been the most challenging part of running a small niche business?
Oh boy, it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. But the joys that I get out of it top everything. Just the fact that I've made such great relationships and friendships over the years. It's something most people don't get from their jobs. But it is a 24/7 thing. Missed out on a lot of vacations, because I was too busy or I couldn't take the time off or this or that. Anyone thinking about it, I would say absolutely. If you're passionate about something and you really want to, do it on a retail scale, go for it. Because it is.
The payoffs are.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's the best thing ever.
And when we use the word payoffs, I hate to use that word, but what I've heard from you so far is the payoff is the relationship and the kind of all of that care and responsibility and meaning that came from repairing these for people. Yeah.
And I've got, so many thank yous and, hugs from people, and they're just so happy to get them back. The thank you notes I have boxes
What will you do with
of
them?
thank you notes. I took them all home.
Yeah.
My wife wants to put them in a scrapbook, but it would be like a dozen scrapbooks.
Ridiculous question. Are they all typewritten?
No, I'd say probably half of them are typewritten and half of them by hand, but all 100% heartfelt.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I toured you around the building earlier because you worked extensively at our original facility on North Bennett Street. This is the first time you've been in this building. Yep. And as we were walking around, you were telling me about your sort of relationship circle, your friend circle, and how people that come in and out of your life as friends and peers and probably even clients, and how there's a connection point of the analog world and the low tech and the hand skills. Yep. Can you tell me about that and what that, I mean, because this is what we all live for in here as well.
Yep. And me too. I think, especially not just what I do, but my shop also just attracts, it puts out a certain vibe. but also attracts people that have that vibe too. So a lot of people that come in my shop are, people who have old school trades, letterpress printers, carpenters,
Musicians, you
musicians. I was telling you, I had a couple of piano tuners for customers,
Mhm.
and musicians, artists, writers, just all of that. And people walk through the door and they think, I'm home. What a friendly, nice place this is.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And you were working 6 days a week, so you were
Yeah.
almost literally always there
Yeah.
for people to walk in and
Yeah.
visit.
Yep, which is another thing why it's so tough to leave,
Mhm.
because I've been there half my life now.
Yeah, yeah.
But and everyone who comes in, people have stories, and people can't wait to, because it's so relaxed when they come in, just naturally start telling me their stories,
Mhm.
and my job's to listen, and I don't say much. I just let people talk, and it's one of the biggest fringe benefits of the job
Mhm.
is, hearing everybody's story.
Even I came in with a story. So the reason that Tom's here and these are here is that in collaboration with the Museum of Print in Haverhill, they lent us these old machines because I wanted to have an inside moment, an in-building moment for our students in the building to come down and clink around and tinker with something that they normally would not otherwise. And they did. But we were lent these machines, and Tom was the only person around to repair them. And so when I brought them in, I had a story for you as well. And
Yep.
you stopped what you were doing and
Yep.
gave me all of your time, and
Yep.
grateful. What elements of this work will you continue to carry with you in the next phase of your life?
It's tough. I'm not quite sure yet. I do know that I'm still going to do something with typewriters. I'm just not sure what that looks like yet. I'm going to take some time off to, rest,
Mhm.
heal up a little bit, and continue to think about what I want to do. Um, traveling for
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And reconnecting with friends, who I haven't seen for a while.
Mhm.
And my wife wants to do this thing where we travel around the country and visit all the typewriter shops.
You're
Which-
never gonna be done with it.
No. Well, there's only so many shops. I mean, it's doable. There actually is a list online of all the typewriter shops in the country, listed state by state.
Mhm.
And document it.
How so?
To possibly write a book about it,
Yeah.
because there's a story, like me, every shop owner's got gazillion stories.
Mhm. Mhm.
And just to get that, perspective from all these different shop owners would be a really rewarding experience that would be worthy of a book, I think.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Even take away the type, I mean, the typewriter piece is phenomenal, but even remove that and just the story of these small businesses that some are passed through generations, some are not, and there's a stopping point.
Yep.
Even just to capture that moment.
Yep.
Yeah. I want to go back to the bittersweet feeling. You're leaving this. You're leaving this trade right now to the next generation, most who are not interested. Not to be blunt, but that to be true.
Yep.
As far as the repair work piece of it.
Yep.
What's the feeling around that you're experiencing? I mean, you went through trying to sell the business for a year.
Yep. I can't believe that first of all, that I couldn't find anybody.
Mhm.
I thought it would be tough, but I thought it was doable. But there are people out there. People say, well, why don't you go to a trade school and recruit some help? And if I was, 10 years younger, I probably
You
would have
might
done
do
that. Yep. There are lots of hobbyists out there, all ages. From teens, because I meet a lot of like young teenagers who are obsessed with typewriters, and they'll come in with their moms and dads, and oh, I've got like 46 machines, and I fixed up every single one of them, and So there are people who are fascinated and of all ages who could hop into this and who are thinking about it. I truly believe that shortly after I'm gone, someone's going to open up a repair shop in the Metro Boston area. And that someone's going to be someone who's a hobbyist, who's been fixing them, who has a fascination and a love for them, and will have the opportunity, once I'm gone, to just hop in there and start on a smaller scale maybe and build it up. But I really think someone's going to do that.
I hope that's true.
Yeah.
I think of, and this is no discredit to hobbyists, because I would consider myself a hobbyist, not in typewriters, but in other things. That's not the same as 45 years of experience,
No.
6 days a week, being able to immediately identify, a curveball in a situation and how to fix it.
But, what was I like when I started 45 years ago? I started out knowing nothing and learned quickly. I apprenticed for my boss for 10 years and then bought it from him. But even then, didn't think I was ready to be the boss to run my own shop, but I was, because I knew enough to get by, and every machine that I did was another learning experience. Every new problem that I came across, I learned to solve, and I remembered and stored that in my thoughts for the next machine that came down the road. So it'll be that with the next guy that comes along. He'll learn as he goes, or she, because I get asked to apprentice all the time. People come in, and most of the people asking are young girls in their 20s who want to learn the trade. And I've had some really good ones over the years. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
How do you explain the enduring value and unique benefits of this analog machine to younger generations who have grown up in a world of instant and digitized information?
I love how older writers talk to young people about it. Mr. McCullough was awesome about that. He used to give talks all over the country, and in the middle of his talk, he'd stop and talk about his typewriter. And he's talking to all the young people, all the writers out there, that, hey, there's this machine, and if you write something on it, it's going to come out so good that you're not going to believe it. And he would tell everyone, well, the thing about typing on a typewriter is it slows you down. Number one most important thing, slows you down. So you have to think about every word, every letter before you hit the key. So in a sense, you're editing yourself before you put it on paper, but then you hit the keys and you're putting it on paper instantly. And there's something about the rhythm, the sound of the typewriter. It uses all your senses in the way that digital doesn't. But there's something about that meshes with your brain. Your brain likes it. And you can type at the speed that your brain is thinking the words that you want to write. They go together. And younger people tell me almost to a person, what I love most about typing is I can only type on it. It doesn't multitask.
Yeah.
I'm not being disturbed. I can type with no distractions, which is a new thing. If you're under 35 or something.
I love the self-editing part.
Yeah.
Because we don't really have to do that now.
I've actually had editors who told me that if two writers gave them the same manuscript, one typed on a computer, one typed on a typewriter, so I could tell you in 30 seconds which one was typed on the typewriter, basically because it was better. Yeah, less words, more of what they actually want to say.
Yeah. Having these downstairs in the first floor gallery, was really fun to see all sorts of age groups pop down there and sit down, and you could just, and I mean, granted, in their spaces, in the workspaces here, you're at your bench and that's kind of the curriculum. You have to focus on something. It's very, you're focusing on a dovetail or what have you. So it's a natural, thing for here, but it was really fun to watch people
Yep.
come in who may not have ever used one.
Yeah, you put a typewriter out on a table in public,
Oh, yeah,
it's like a magnet, it just draws people,
it is.
and especially young people.
It is. A frivolous question before I get to some of our virtual guest questions. We're a bunch of tool nerds in this building, so what has been your most used tool in your trade?
My number one tool is something called a spring hook, which you can buy on Amazon. And you'll find all kinds of cool stuff to do with it around the house. But essentially, it's a tool. It's about this long and really skinny, like a knitting needle. It's got a hook at one end, little hook, and it's got a pushing device on the other end. So it's can push or pull. It's in my hand all day long.
How many did you how many do you have at once?
How many spring hooks?
Yeah, I mean, you have
I go through them because I'm tough on tools.
Yeah.
I break them a lot. Because I do more with them than they're supposed to do, so they break. But I've got a half a dozen of them. And between that and I have like a small Craftsman screwdriver, about this big with a small flat head on it. And between the two of them, I could fix them.
Yeah.
But the spring hook's in my hand all day long because I do other things with them besides what it was designed for. Because I have to detail machines, I have to clean every machine and
Yeah.
includes detailing. And the spring hook, lets me get like a cleaning cloth into the little nooks and crannies and crevices and things like that.
A question that you may have already touched on, but where are your fans? This is someone who you've repaired their typewriters. Where will these people be able to find replacement ribbons and parts and future repair work?
I'm telling people I will still be available for questions. I'm keeping my Instagram, my Facebook accounts open under Cambridge Typewriter. So people can, reach out and message me, and I'm happy to give them information, answer them back. Essentially, ribbons, you get them on Amazon, but a lot of people don't like doing that. So I'm sending them to a place in Maryland called Ribbons Unlimited. Just Google Ribbons Unlimited. This guy's a one-man ribbon manufacturer, makes the best ribbons on the East Coast. Most typewriter people send their customers to him. I would use him, but he won't sell wholesale to me. So I have to buy through corporate sources, which don't make as good a ribbon. Parts are a problem, always going to be a problem.
Is that something that you pick from old parts that's
Yeah,
from the
yeah,
ecosystem?
like I have what I call my graveyard at home,
Mhm.
which is about 150 to 200 machines that I just use for parts, spread out all over my house. But people don't have access to that, so they can. I'm telling people, like, you just go to like the typewriter chat groups online, like the Antique Typewriter Forum or Yahoo Typewriter Forum, places like that. A lot of typewriter people are on there. You can just put out a question and somebody will know something and steer you in the right direction.
Speaking of types of typewriters, which type of typewriter do you type on?
I type on all the above. First of all, I get asked about my collection all the time because most shop owners have like hundreds of machines. I don't like the idea of just having machines rotting under glass. I want them out there, people using them. My collection's 20 machines.
Wow.
That's it.
And is there one that you go to consistently to?
Right now, my go-to machine, it's just anchored on my dining room table. It's a 1936 LC Smith number 8, which is something a little bigger than this. And it's olive green, like an army colored olive. It's a government issue. So it was probably used at a federal office or services branch. And it's just got if you're into typing, it's got like the dream touch.
Yeah.
Where you only have to hit the keys half as hard as any other machine, and the keys come flying up. And I can't stop typing on it.
And how often do you do maintenance on it?
Never. I just brought it. I reconditioned it. Oh, in fact, this machine, I sold it to someone like 15 years ago. and immediately regretted it. And then I had an occasion, it came back to me 3 or 4 years ago. The person I sold it to wasn't using it anymore and thought I might want it back.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it.
That is some, that's
I
serendipity.
bought it back for, I think, what he paid for it. So I overpaid for it, but I wanted it back so bad because I remembered it.
That's great.
And we've been inseparable since.
This is a really funny question. Tom, have you ever thought of designing and building the ultimate typewriter, the Furrier typewriter, perhaps?
No, I never thought of that.
Well,
That's
there
an
you go.
that's a fun question.
Here's your next
'Cause,
race.
yeah, there's things that I would put into it, yeah.
Do you ever get stumped by a repair request, or was there a make or model or problem that you couldn't solve? And there is one right here that.
Yeah.
This one,
Well,
we're stumped on.
I probably get maybe 10 or 12 machines a year that I can't repair.
What is usually the reason?
For all mechanical machines, it's that they were dropped.
Hmm.
It is probably the biggest thing. And, the frame's been busted in 6 places, and, the carriage has been bent and twisted to the point where you can't bend them back. But these things were made with such heavy duty, alloys and steel and stuff, you really can't bend them back. So it's dropping them bends them past the point of no return.
Can you say what was the issue with this one?
It had been sitting so long that it was, that's got like 700 moving parts on it. Every single one of them was frozen, like badly frozen. It would be physically impossible to get them all working correctly again. I think I told you I could get it running, but just not good enough to use. So, would have been wasting your money putting anything into it.
Yeah. So these atrophy as well.
Yep. Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. You have to. In fact, for the last 10 years, I tell everyone that's bringing one in for repair, I tell them right up front, because it's expensive to, overhaul them. Don't put anything into it unless you're going to use it. If you're going to, spend $250, $300 on it, and then it's going to go home and sit for 6 months or a year,
Don't bother.
Don't bother.
Yeah.
It's going to come up all over again.
Have you come across any unique customizations that were done to a typewriter in your life?
Yeah, that's always really cool to see. I call them like home fixes. People try and fix them at home. People come up with some really interesting things, whatever they had laying around the house, paper clips, rubber bands, stuff they just, and anything they could do to tie something together and get it working again.
What's the worst thing that someone can do to do a home fix on a typewriter?
I think the worst thing you can do is take the carriage off the machine. Because a lot of machines, they don't really go back on, or certainly not the right way. But that reminds me of a story, because I used to fix typewriters that were used in a prison in Cambridge. And they used to let the prisoners type on typewriters in the library. And sometimes they'd have nothing better to do than to figure out how to short circuit or, break a typewriter. And so one of the guards used to bring them into me like once a month, and I'd fix them. And I would always be amazed at all the genius ways somebody thought of to break the typewriter. I go, wow, they must have thought about that for a week.
Not an easy thing to do.
No. Yeah, sometimes tougher to fix.
Anyone in this room have questions for Tom? Yeah, yes, Stephen.
Tom, you repaired or tuned up my Hermes 3000 a few years ago. Thank you for that. I was curious. I've been restoring antique jukeboxes for 20 or so years, and I was curious from the typewriter perspective. For instance, I was wondering if you could tell us about how some makers of typewriters achieve the same results, only using something that was wildly different than another maker. For instance, are they generically designed, or are they achieving the same results in very different ways? I would compare it to say how in 1946 Wurlitzer achieved the results of playing music versus the same year of a Rockola. They two different minds achieve the same results with something completely different to get to the same end result.
With typewriters, all the manufacturers, didn't want to license things from other manufacturers, so everybody came up with their own design. They had their own engineers make their own designs. And I've always told people the physics of the typewriter is the same from machine to machine, from brand to brand. The physics of how they work is the same, but the mechanisms are slightly different. Probably the most important mechanism in every machine is what they call the escapement mechanism, which is just like the escapement in a watch. You know, it's a timing device that makes the carriage move in conjunction with hitting the keys with the space bar. But every brand, the escapement mechanism is a totally different animal. But it works the same, but it's just works differently. So you have to, I've always said, if you could fix one typewriter, like Smith Coronas are my favorite. It was the first thing I learned to fix. And I thought that they made the simplest mechanisms. Everybody else found ways to complicate them or take simple mechanisms and complicate them just because they could. And that's the difference between like American manufacturers and say European manufacturers. The German and the Swiss engineers always went a step further. But everyone was trying to outdo everyone else and come up with a new thing from year to year to sell, like a sales gimmick type of thing. Those were most of the differences, I think. I would call them sales gimmicks.
Softer touch.
Yes, yeah.
Quiet.
Or some extra feature.
Quiet.
Yeah, or some extra feature where it does like a half space or something like that, or a half backspace.
Thank you.
The oldest one that you worked on?
Oldest one, some from like the 1880s. Typewriters go back to like, the first mass-produced one, like 1873, but people have been working on them actually for like a couple 100 years. But they didn't make one good enough to be mass-produced until Remington did in 1873.
Sure. Let me just get to Juliana. She raised her
So
hand
I was just
earlier.
gonna ask, what the trade community is like. Do you have like an organization with other restorers or?
No, they didn't. Typewriters used to be part of office machine dealers, like they call it NAMDA, National Office Machine Dealers Association, which we belonged to back in the day. But typewriters themselves, just lots of, regional, things, there's no one central typewriter organization, just lots of little ones, little groups. But people, find what's available in their area.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Walter.
I wondered what the differences are in manual typewriters. It seems it's a machine that's, when you see somebody who uses one, you've got, why do you use a manual typewriter?
Right,
Is it the link with thought process going to your hands?
exactly it. It's all the sensory feedback you get from that old manual, clunky, awkward typing machine. It just it resonates with something in you, which is your brain, obviously. And you just feel in sync with it. And like it's natural. And even like the Selectric, I think of the Selectric as like the greatest typewriter ever made. But it's not the same. I love typing on a Selectric. Much easier to type a book on, but it's not going to be as enjoyable as typing that book on this one. So, I use everything at home. I love the old machines. I love the newer machines. Depends on what my mood is and what I'm typing.
This was my joyful one to type on downstairs. It feels like a
Yeah.
Cadillac.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Electric machines are, fast and smooth.
Yeah. To the best of your knowledge, do some government documents still have to be completed via typewriter?
Yes, but that's quickly changing. And also, town and city clerks used to have documents that had to be typewritten,
Mhm.
like, birth certificates and death certificates had to be typewritten. That's changing. Really about time,
Yeah.
but, you know, for years, I still have lots of town clerks that I do. In
Mhm.
fact, when I leave here, I'm going to Cambridge City Clerk's office.
Still working. You're not
Yep.
retired yet.
No.
Anyone else have questions for Tom before I ask him one very special question? No, okay.
Okay.
I had, yes, please, yeah.
Question, I brought my Olympia in to Tom to fix last year. And I haven't typed on it for about 3 months and it's starting to stick, so what can I do at home? To, besides continue to use it and, or besides.
Okay. You can put like a little bit of oil on the keys.
What
Okay,
kind of oil?
sewing machine oil.
I've got that.
That is typewriter oil. If I used to, even back in the day when they had like, you know, corporate suppliers and you ordered typewriter oil, you get this big gallon that said sewing machine oil on it.
Still have my little green.
Yeah. Yep.
35 cents on it.
Yep,
Plenty
yep.
of-
You can just put like a couple of drops on your finger and just like run them in here where the keys come up in those slots there, because that's where they stick. And just, you know, rub them in there and then just put some paper and hit the keys like 3 or 4 times in a row, every key, and it loosens it right up and it'll be good for a bunch more months. Yeah.
I had asked you a question about what, after all this press that you've gone through in the past few months or year, what's something that you weren't asked that you wished you were asked? And I stumped you on that, but I think I found the question that I want to ask you that maybe no one has asked.
Okay, cool.
What are you typing on your typewriter?
Yeah, no one's answering.
Yes.
Well, currently, I have pen pals that, I type to and that write back. And you know, I keep one on my table for addressing envelopes all the time, because.
One separate one for addressing envelopes and a separate one for writing?
No, I mix it all up.
Mhm.
The big one I was talking, my big government issue one, I'm doing like envelopes and stuff on it. I have been typing letters for the last couple of months on it, but I rotate machines every couple of months. You know, half of my machines are old clunkers, half of them are what I call modern, which are like your Olympias and your Hermes machines. I consider those modern machines, even though they're 50s and 60s. But they're 2 different typing experiences, and but I want to get all my machines used
Mhm.
over a couple of over a year or 2.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just I don't write on my typewriter as much as I used to, but I've picked up a few new pen pals lately, so I'm writing more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you use them as your daily, these are your
Yeah.
as your everyday sort of tasks.
Yeah.
Addressing envelopes, and that's really great.
Yeah, because I tell people that come in all the time to buy them, whatever you do, put it somewhere and keep it out. Don't
Mhm.
put it away every time you use it, because when you keep it out, you'll see it and you'll want to use it. And you're gonna end up doing things on it that you didn't dream or even think of.
Mhm. Mhm. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you for bringing your coat for us to hang up behind you. This is his jacket from the shop. And thank you all for being here and for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
congratulations. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon.